My name is Claire. I am 37 years old. For a long time I believed love ended loudly, through screaming arguments, betrayal, slammed doors, and final words that could never be taken back. I was wrong. Love can disappear quietly, so quietly that you do not notice it slipping away until you are standing alone in a room that once felt like home. I was married to Jonathan for 13 years. He was not a dramatic man. He never raised his voice, never insulted me, never made promises he could not keep. If love were measured in reliability, he would have been perfect. That is why it took me so long to understand something was wrong. At first, the changes were small. He stopped telling me about his day. Stopped asking about mine. He still sat next to me on the couch, still slept in the same bed, still ate the meals I cooked, but his eyes were always somewhere else. When I asked if something was bothering him, he smiled and said he was just tired. I believed him because it was easier than questioning the man I loved. Then the nights began to change. Jonathan started coming home late, not every night, just often enough to make my chest feel tight. Sometimes he did not come home at all, sending short messages saying he was staying elsewhere or working through the night. I never checked his phone. I trusted him, but trust does not silence fear, it only delays it. Weeks turned into months, and we slowly became strangers sharing the same space. We stopped touching. Stopped planning. Stopped being partners. One evening, I waited for him with dinner. The food went cold while I stared at the clock and listened to the house breathe without him. When he finally came home, I did not shout or accuse him. I asked the question I had been holding inside for weeks. I asked if he was still happy with me. He froze, then said he did not know how to answer that. That night, I cried alone in the bathroom so he would not hear me. From that moment, I began noticing everything. The way he avoided eye contact. The way his hands shook when his phone rang. The way he seemed nervous even when nothing was happening. I convinced myself there was someone else. That explanation hurt, but at least it made sense. What hurt more was not knowing. One night, after he said he needed some air and left the house, I waited 10 minutes and followed him. He did not go to another woman. He did not go to a bar. He drove to the edge of the city, to a long-term care facility I had never seen before. I parked across the street and watched him go inside. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, my heart racing, imagining every possible explanation. When he came out, his shoulders were slumped and his face looked older, broken in a way I had never seen. When we got home, I confronted him. I asked who he was visiting. He looked at me for a long time before quietly saying it was his mother. I had never met her. She had abandoned him years ago, left the country, cut all contact. He told me she was sick with advanced dementia and had no one else. He had been paying for her care, visiting her every night, handling everything alone. When I asked why he never told me, he said he did not want her to become part of our life and did not want me to see him this way. That answer hurt more than any affair ever could because it meant he did not trust me with his weakness. I wanted to help, to be there for him, but he had already built walls too thick to break. Months passed, and despite knowing the truth, I still felt completely alone. He was drowning in responsibility and guilt, and I was drowning in neglect, and we were drowning separately. One night, he did not come home and did not answer his phone. I panicked and called hospitals, friends, anyone who might know where he was. At dawn, I received a call from the care facility. Jonathan had collapsed from heart failure caused by exhaustion and stress. When I reached the hospital, he was barely conscious. He apologized, saying he never meant to shut me out and only wanted to protect me from his pain. He died that morning. And with him died every conversation we would never have. I thought I had been married to a distant man. Only after he was gone did I understand that I had been married to someone who carried too much alone, and I would spend the rest of my life wishing I had seen it sooner. After Jonathan died, the world did not stop. That was the cruelest part. People still went to work. Cars still filled the streets. The sun still rose every morning as if nothing irreversible had happened. But my life had split into two versions. Before him. And after him. For weeks, I lived on autopilot. I answered messages without reading them. Ate without tasting anything. Slept without resting. The house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. Too full of memories. His jacket was still hanging behind the door. His shoes still stood neatly by the wall. His mug, the chipped blue one he loved, was still in the sink. I couldn't bring myself to move anything. Because touching his things felt like admitting he was never coming back. People kept telling me the same sentence, over and over again. He was a good man. I nodded every time. But what I wanted to scream was this. Being good doesn't protect you from dying alone. A month after the funeral, I found his notebook. It was hidden in the back of a drawer, underneath old documents. I almost threw it away without opening it. I'm glad I didn't. It wasn't a diary. Not really. It was a list. Dates. Addresses. Amounts of money. Names I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was related to his work. Then I saw the notes written in the margins. Paid for medication. Visited tonight, she was calmer. Bring soup tomorrow. Don't tell Claire. My name. Written again and again. I sat on the bedroom floor and read every page. Jonathan had been helping people I had never met. Elderly neighbors. A former co-worker's disabled sister. A man who had lost his job and was weeks away from homelessness. Small acts. Quiet ones. He never spoke about them. Never asked for praise. He had built an entire second life of responsibility and sacrifice, and shut me out of it completely. I cried harder that night than I had on the day he died. Because now I understood something unbearable. He hadn't just been tired. He had been drowning. And I had mistaken his silence for indifference. I started visiting the care facility where his mother had stayed. I didn't know why at first. Maybe guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the desperate need to understand the man I had married too late. She didn't recognize me. She barely recognized him in her final weeks. But the nurses remembered. They told me stories Jonathan never shared. How he stayed late even after visiting hours. How he held her hand when she screamed at shadows. How he paid for other patients' meals when families stopped coming. One nurse said something that broke me completely. He never complained, she said. But he looked so tired, like someone who didn't believe he deserved help. That sentence followed me home. Jonathan didn't think he deserved help. He didn't think he deserved to be weak. And I had unknowingly reinforced that belief by never pushing hard enough when he said, "I'm fine." Weeks turned into months. I started therapy. Not because I wanted to heal, but because I couldn't breathe under the weight of all the things I wished I had said. I wished I had told him. You don't have to protect me from pain. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to carry this alone. But wishes are useless once someone is gone. So I did the only thing left. I carried his story forward. I started volunteering at the same facility. Then at a local support center. I listened. I learned to recognize the signs I had missed before. The silence. The exhaustion. The way people disappear emotionally long before they leave physically. Sometimes I see men who remind me of Jonathan. Quiet. Responsible. Polite. Men who think love means endurance instead of honesty. When I see them, I speak up. I tell them what no one told my husband. Strength is not silence. Love is not sacrifice without sharing. And being needed does not mean being alone. Jonathan didn't die because he loved too much. He died because he believed love meant carrying everything himself. I will not let his story end that way. He was more than a distant husband. He was a man who gave until there was nothing left. And now, I live loudly for the parts of him that were never heard.